This is General Election 2019, and we are conducting a special series of in-depth interviews with Christian representatives of the major political parties who will determine who our next government will be when we all go to the polls on Thursday, the 12th of December. And in this interview, I'm interviewing Sid Cordle, who is the leader of the Christian People's Alliance. Sid, warm welcome to the programme.
Thank you.
Many of our viewers know you very well because you're a regular on Politics Today. But for someone seeing you for the first time, how did you come to faith in the Lord Jesus Christ, and how did you get involved in politics?
Well, I'm pleased to say that I was brought up in a Christian family, so I was encouraged to read the Bible and pray from a very early age. And I came to a point in my life where I was particularly impacted by the parable of the sower. And I thought, the seed has been sown in my life, but where have I got to? Am I bearing fruit? Am I yielding fruit? I thought, no, there's no fruit in my life. I want my life to bear fruit. So that was what really brought me to a place where I want to give myself to God. And in my church, we were having revival prayer meetings, and the pastor was telling us about some revivals that were going on all over the world. And I was also thinking, I want that sort of power of God in my life. But then as far as politics was concerned, also one of the leaders of the church I was going to was going behind the then Iron Curtain with Bibles and coming back with stories of the persecution of Christians behind the Iron Curtain, intense persecution. And the fact that they weren't allowed to print Bibles, they weren't allowed to read Bibles, they were being reported by neighbours for having any meetings at all and living in fear. And he was saying, this communism could come to Britain if we're not careful. And in my mind, as a young man, as a teenager, I'm thinking, I don't want communism here. I don't want Christians to live in this sort of fear for their faith. I'm going to stand against it. And when I went to university, I was somebody who stood campaigning courageously at that age of only 18, 19 against communism and against what that meant for Christians.
So also, Sid, how did you enter into politics, and how did you then become leader of the Christian People's Alliance?
Okay, so I've told you what I was doing as when I first went to university. What then happened was that I stood for union president just as a Christian, and after I left, I became the national coordinator of Christians in student politics. So I was just encouraging Christians then to get involved in politics. What I found is I went to the conference of the National Union of Students, and there was every shade of left-wing opinion there, but no Christian bookstore. And I put that right. I organised Christian bookstores, and I also organised meetings and conferences for Christians interested in politics when I was then 20, 21, 22. And when I then left university, I felt I needed to be involved in one of the major parties because I couldn't be just in the big wide world just as a Christian without being attached to one of the major parties. And speaking to a friend, I was encouraged to join the Conservative Party, which I then joined in 1977. And I was quite happy in the Conservative Party for a long time. And I became a Conservative councillor for 6 years, and I was on the national executive of the party. I was very involved in the party. But the crunch point came for me in 2003, 2004, when the party got rid of Ian Duncan Smith, and Michael Howard came in with a whole new direction for the party, out with Christian family values, in with more liberal social values. And that was the point where I left the Conservative Party and joined the Christian People's Alliance.
Excellent. So I have to ask you, you've been leader of the Christian People's Alliance now for several years, Sid, without any electoral success. So is voting for CPA a waste of a vote? And can you explain to our viewers why they should vote for your party?
Okay, well, what I've done is taken the party from a position where we were very focused on a small area. We did win seats in Newham, and we had Christian People's Alliance councillors on Newham Council. But the problem then is that the whole party focus was just on this one small area in Newham. And what I've tried to do since I've been leader is to focus the party more on a national basis, to try and get more candidates nationwide. So we've got candidates now in Scotland, in the North East, in Birmingham. We've had candidates in Manchester and Leeds, so that we're not just focused on one small area. So we are now much more of a national party. And my aim is, I apologise to the viewers that are watching that say, I'd love to vote for that party, but we've got no candidate in my area. My aim is to get candidates across the country so we become a real option for government. And every candidate who's standing now for the Christian People's Alliance, I'm saying to them, this is not about one election. This is about increasing and growing the party year on year so that we become a national option. It's don't just think in terms of standing once, you've got to think in terms of standing again and again. So my first target is to make the Christian People's Alliance a real option. And as we become a real option and as we get more votes nationwide, then I believe that we will become a challenge to the other parties. That's the initial process, to become a challenge to the other parties nationwide.
And Sid, we're living in a time where it's becoming increasingly difficult to be a Bible-believing Christian and be in frontline politics. And what we've seen during this election is we've seen Christians and those who have voted on family issues being purged from major political parties, unable to stand. And we're seeing also that Christians are being marginalised by mainstream society. What are your thoughts on this issue, and how is the CBA going to readdress this growing danger for Christians in the UK?
Okay, well, what you're saying is absolutely right, and this is an issue which I actually addressed in my book, which is Authority Over the Nations, God and Politics. Now, in that book, I actually look at how effective Christians are in Conservative, Labour and Liberal Democrat parties, all with their groups and all seeking apparently to influence their party with Christian values. But actually, when you look at it in detail, they've almost completely abandoned the agenda. What they've become is groups that are now just trying to get votes for Christians for their respective parties. And promoting Christianity within their party is just almost seems as though it's failed completely. And some of them, I've read the manifestos. I've read the Labour manifesto, the Lib Dem manifesto, and the Conservative manifesto. And I'm shocked, frankly, with what I've been reading. And particularly, you read on page 48 of the Labour Party manifesto, we will introduce no-fault divorce. We will protect a woman's reproductive rights, and we will decriminalise abortion. And the Catholic Herald said to the Labour Party, what does this mean, that you're going to decriminalise abortion? And they said it means abortion up to birth with no penalty. So that is now Labour Party policy. You read the Lib Dem manifesto and it says that they're going to decriminalise abortion up to 24 weeks. But it also says that they're going to have protection zones outside all abortion clinics nationwide so that no prayer will be allowed outside abortion clinics anywhere in the country. Now, that's a major, major issue because religion is a protected characteristic under the Equalities Act. So when you start banning prayer, you're banning something which actually we have a right to do, a legal right to do anywhere. So in a sense, they're conflicting with the law. But from a Christian point of view, you're reading these manifestos and you're saying these manifestos can only be interpreted as being anti-Christian, totally anti-Christian. And then also you've had the situation in the Lib Dem party where one of their candidates, Robert Flello, just before the election, candidate in Stoke South, just before the election, was deselected because he said that he opposed abortion and opposed some other things alongside with it. And so all of a sudden you're saying, well, the Lib Dem will not allow candidates that do not support this policy to stand. So where does that leave Christians in the Lib Dem party? Completely sidelined. And that's why we desperately need to come together, to stand together and to say, these are our values and these are the values we are not going to compromise on and no one's going to stop us putting forward these values.
And Sid, when it comes to the marginalisation of Christians in the workplace, there's a great deal of fear. There's a fear of mentioning their faith. There is a fear of praying for colleagues, particularly those who work in the health sector, and also in social care where people are needing and they're hurting. What policies can you recommend that can actually protect Christians in the workplace from facing instant dismissal, sackings or marginalisation?
Well, that's where Christian Concern and the Christian Legal Centre come in, who the work they do I welcome enormously. And obviously anyone that does face that position where they're threatened with dismissal or with anything for putting forward Christian points of view, then Christian Concern, the Christian Legal Centre, will come in and support them. But ultimately, the question that we've got to face as Christians is, what are we most concerned about? You see, Jesus actually said at one point, do not fear those who kill the body but cannot kill the soul, but fear him who can destroy soul and body in hell. So he's basically saying, do not fear. So we've got to come to that place. Christians have got to come to that place where we're not frightened to stand for God boldly, whatever the cost, and really whatever the cost, because what we've got on our minds is eternity. Eternity is on our minds, not I've got to keep my job at all costs.
Sid, this year's general election is very much dominated by Brexit. What is your party's position on Brexit? Do you support Boris Johnson's EU withdrawal agreement? Do you support a no deal? Or does your party support remaining in the European Union? What's your position?
Okay, well, the slogan that we're putting forward is to uphold democracy. And upholding democracy basically means that we've got to implement the decision of the 2016 referendum. Now, as far as Boris Johnson's deal is concerned, basically what that does is begin an interim process, which has, during the interim process, all these sort of things are going to be happening, which aren't particularly very good or very useful, but it does bring us to a point in December 2020 where we leave properly and where we leave completely. So as far as I'm concerned, we could live with it. We could live with Boris Johnson's deal, because we are going to leave, eventually we're going to leave properly. But what we offer, which is unique, is we would guarantee a second referendum 5 to 10 years after we've left, when there is evidence of what's happened, which would then bring the country back together again, as the simple question then will be, do you wish to rejoin the European Union? And I believe that we can make a success of it, and that when we've made a success of it, there'll be very few people wanting to rejoin. But if we're wrong, there should be some sort of democratic mechanism where people can rejoin.
The CPA has made news headlines in this general election, which you're fully aware of, by being accused of delivering pro-life leaflets to turn the Muslim community in London, particularly in the constituency of Walthamstow, to unseat the pro-choice Labour candidate Stella Creasy, who is standing for re-election. What is your response to this news story, and what is your angle on this news story?
Well, absolutely, because the Quran actually forbids abortion. So if in Walthamstow the Muslims and the Christians in Walthamstow have got a member of parliament who is has put forward a resolution in the House of Commons on their behalf, imposing a very extreme form of abortion on Northern Ireland, and she doesn't beat around the bush. She boasts of the fact that the DUP in Northern Ireland is now overseeing the most extreme abortion in the world, and it is abortion up to birth for any disability, and that is what's been imposed. We've got a right to say this is wrong, and we've got a right to say to the Muslim community, wait a minute, what's more important to you? Having favour with the Labour Party or following what the Quran says? So absolutely, we're challenging the Muslim community that they should come with us on this issue, and on this issue to campaign against and vote against Stella Creasy.
Sid, according to your election manifesto, when it comes to the economy, your party states that you want to make a fair tax and to help the poor by targeting the big multinational internet companies that are based here, in which you believe that you should actually introduce something called a turnover tax, which you believe will raise 32 billion. Isn't there a danger that you would then, these big multinational internet companies would disinvest from the UK?
No, quite the opposite, funnily enough, because you see, the idea of the turnover tax, as you say, is to get money off these multinational companies that send all their profits abroad. But we would offset corporation tax against the turnover tax. So companies that are based here and pay corporation tax will pay less than companies that are based abroad. So within our scheme, there's actually an incentive for companies to be based in the UK. And at the moment, a lot of these companies like Facebook and Google, for instance, are based in Ireland. Yep. because Ireland has only 12% corporation tax rate. Well, if you can offset your corporation tax against the turnover tax, suddenly there'll be a greater incentive to be located in the UK to avoid the turnover tax. But we believe it's a very ethical way of taxing, and the important thing is that we're going to use 12 billion of that 32 billion that you talked about to restore the benefit cuts, which have had a disastrous effect on the poorest people in our society and will make universal credit work. At the moment, anyone that applies for universal credit has to wait 5 weeks before they get any money. And that is completely intolerable for people that have got nothing to live on. But other parties are saying we're going to get rid of the 5-week waiting period, but they've got no means of raising money to do it. We've said we're going to get rid of the 5-week waiting period, we're going to reform universal credit, we're going to make it work, and this is where we're going to get the money from.
And Sid, also, what is your party doing or proposing to actually help enterprise and to generate industry in this country?
Well, we are absolutely a business-friendly party, and we're going to basically means that we're going to make sure that we've got a tax system that supports enterprise. And we support corporation tax at 19%, which is going to stay at. We're not going to raise it as the Labour Party would. And we're going to have a threshold for the turnover tax you've described of 85,000. So the same as the VAT threshold, so the smaller businesses will be encouraged to develop and thrive. And absolutely, we want to do whatever we can to support smaller business. We'll listen to what they've got to say. But we are a business-friendly party. We're a business-friendly party that believes in the creation of wealth, but also believes in using the wealth we create to help the poorest in society.
And on education, your manifesto advocates that the more money should be invested in home education. Why is your party advocating more home education?
No, well, I don't think that's quite true. What we're saying is that we've got the rights of parents to educate their children at home if they wish to, without interference from the state. That's what we're saying. The fact is, because of the pressure on schools, particularly recently with this relationship and sex education, which to a lot of people is intolerant, there are a lot more parents that are choosing to educate their children at home. Now, we're not saying, yes, we will encourage that more and more. We're saying we would basically make sure that parents are free to do that if they wish without any state interference. That's what we're saying. And obviously we would also encourage Christian schools to operate, and we'll encourage parents that wish to home educate but also to work together to support each other. These processes are good. You see, what's happening at the moment is that the state is trying to introduce a register of home-educated children. The only reason for that register is so that they can interfere in the process. But throughout the education system, we believe and uphold the rights of parents to be the key figures in all this. You see, at the moment, we've had these massive battles in Birmingham of parents opposing the schools. That shouldn't be happening. A school should be working with their parents, and if the parents aren't happy, they should change the curriculum so the parents are happy.
And on the NHS, which is always a major, big political issue when it comes to elections, what is your party's policies on our beloved National Health Service?
OK, well, our policy is to maintain spending at its current level, but we've also got some detailed policies behind it, if you like, which we believe will mean there'll be less pressure on the National Health Service. So, for instance, we've got policies on strengthening marriage and the family, where we're going to give a grant of £12,000 to couples when they get married, which will be on the condition they go for at least 5 sessions of training, and another £6,000 grant when they have their first child, provided they go for, again, at least 5 sessions of training, so that people think about what's involved in marriage and people think about what's involved in having children. Now, we believe that by strengthening marriage and the family like that, that will actually mean there'll be less pressure on the health service, because statistics show that with broken families that are far likely to be in ill health. And we've also got some detailed policies for in relation to criminals. I don't know whether you're going to come on to that.
Yes, yeah, that was my next question. So,
okay.
Explain to us how your party will tackle rising crime, particularly the knifing epidemic that we have in our capital.
Yes, well, there's 2 things. The first thing is that we want to work with people when they leave prison. Now, you see, what happens is that people go into prison Now, if they're on their own, then the house that they've been living in won't be there when they come back, because they can't pay rent for the property while they're in prison. So they come out of prison, they've got nowhere to live. And even if they've been in a family, it may well be that the authorities will say, we've got to protect the family, you're not allowed to go back. So even in those situations, they may have nowhere to go. Now, we will guarantee that every person that leaves prison will have a place to live where they can live securely. And we will work with them, particularly those that are on drink and drugs. We will work with them to help them get off drink and drugs. Now, where that's been done in, like, for instance, in Saltbox in Stoke and the Message Trust in Manchester, they've got reoffending rates that on a national average are 30%. They've got them down to below 10%. That means fewer victims. It means less pressure on prisons and the courts. And it means that prisoners are happier because they've got something to look forward to when they come out. And it's not science, but it's not difficult, but we must do this. And we've also got to invest more in youth centres and youth help so that people aren't encouraged to move into a life of crime. And these measures are very, very necessary. Boris Johnson's proposals were just to build more prisons and have tougher sentences. It may have a short-term fix, but in the long term, it will not solve the problem of crime in this country.
And Sid, the issue of anti-Semitism or Jew hatred has been a major feature, sadly, of this year's general election, particularly with the courageous comments made by the Chief Rabbi Ephraim Mervis, which is unprecedented for him to actually intervene in this election. And he said that the soul of the nation is at stake if the Labour Party gains power. And he said that Jeremy Corbyn is complicit in prejudice and unfit for office. And considering that our own precious Jewish community is very scared regarding this general election, what reassurances do the CPA have in order to tackle this growing problem of Jew hatred in our country, which not only affects the Jewish community, but will effectively affect our entire society?
Well, you see, all we can do, basically, is to expose it, to expose what's going on, which is happening effectively. Because, it was exposed recently by Andrew Neil in an interview with Jeremy Corbyn when he asked him point blank, will you apologise to the Jewish community for the things that you've said and done, where you've called Hamas and Hezbollah your friends, where you've had a mural that's clearly an anti-Semitic mural, and you've said, oh, why has it been taken down? So you've defended this mural. And you've been to Libya and been honouring the graves of people that were murdering Israelis at the Munich Olympics. You've done all these things. Now, will you please, if you're saying that, you regret it, will you please apologise to the Jewish community? And Jeremy Corbyn point blank refused. So all we can do is to expose it and expose his position, expose what he's saying, so that everyone knows if Jeremy Corbyn becomes Prime Minister, we will have the most anti-Jewish Prime Minister that we've ever had in this country. And, if people know what they're voting for and they make that choice, there's nothing we can do.
And Sid, what's your party's position on Israel? Because so many of our viewers, so many born-again Christians have a love and a passion for Israel and the Jewish people.
Yes, well, absolutely. I mean, we're very supportive of Israel. In fact, we give 1/10 of all the income that comes to the Christian People's Alliance, we give to the Fellowship of Israel-related ministries, which shows our commitment to ministry in Israel as a party. And we would move the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, as Donald Trump has done for America. We're the only party that says, yes, we will move the embassy, and we will honour the choice that the Jewish people have made to have their capital at Jerusalem, because they should be making the choice, not us. So absolutely, we'll be working with the Israeli government. We don't necessarily support everything the Israeli government does, but we'll absolutely be working with them, and we uphold their right to exist and their right to live in freedom. We honour democracy that's in Israel, the most democratic country in the Middle East, and we'll do whatever we can to seek to support the Palestinians in having a secure place to live as well, alongside a democratic Israel with full protection.
And Sid, one major concern for Christians is this growing persecution of believers, particularly in the Middle East, where they are being ethnically cleansed. from the birthplace of Christianity. What can your party do to not only raise this as an issue, but also to recommend policies that will actually protect these ancient Christian communities in the Middle East?
Well, I think the key thing that we can do is to use aid to protect Christians. So, for instance, in Pakistan, we give them currently £441 million of aid per year. And we can say to the Pakistani government, I'm sorry, this aid is going to be reduced unless you stop persecuting Christians, unless you stop putting them in prison for simply saying things like Ashia Bibi said, Jesus Christ died on the cross for my sins, what's Muhammad done for you? For that, she was in prison for 8 years, sentenced to death. But there's many other people under the 295C law that have been in Pakistan, that are Christians that have been sentenced to death. Now, I believe that we should say, OK, it's going to reduce, and it's going to continue reducing, and it'll go down to nil if you're not careful, unless you actually protect Christians within your country. Now, that's something concrete we can say, and we can say that to any country that is persecuting Christians. We cannot decide what every country does, but we can influence, and we can use aid to influence, and if we're in power, that's absolutely something we'll do.
Sid, we're coming down to the end of this interview. I think we've got about a minute left of this interview. I'll give you this opportunity to give a 45-second pitch to our viewers why they should be supporting the Christian People's Alliance in this year's general election, when everyone goes to the polls on Thursday, the 12th of December.
OK, well, we believe that Britain needs Christian values, and the 5 platforms on which we're standing, which we have talked about in this interview, for Brexit, we have to uphold democracy, we have to strengthen marriage and the family, we have to protect the unborn, we have to make tax fair and show care for the poor, and we have to fight crime. Those are our 5 slogans, and we believe in all those areas that we have policies which no other party has got, which are for the benefit of this nation. And if you can vote Christian People's Alliance, please support us. And if you can't, please make sure that next time you're standing, or you put somebody else forward to stand in your area, so that you can vote Christian People's Alliance.
Sid Cordle, leader of the Christian People's Alliance, thank you for joining me for this general election special, and I want to thank you for watching this programme, in which you will make up your own mind when it comes to Thursday the 12th of December. So vote and pray.